Welcome to Season 5 of How I Made It Through, and thank you for joining us. I have invited Ray Catania, author, metaphysical teacher, and coach, to join me as my co-host as we aim to engage, challenge, inspire, and teach you, our listeners, what it really means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. We'll explore not just concepts, but attempt to unravel the neuroscience of metaphysics, as well as practices designed to expand consciousness, increase healing, and develop a profound connection to love. We'll explore God, death, the afterlife, and pushing past limitations as we encourage you to break free of the trance of fear so that you may experience greater freedom, peace, and connection to yourselves, each other, and spirit.
Welcome to our first episode.
Together. Yeah, this is
Yes.
exciting. So we have a list of questions. So this is our very first inaugurals. For those of you who tuned in over the years, I have invited Ray, as I said in the intro, and we have a list of viewer questions that came through, some for him and some for me, as a way of saying, who are we? What do we think about? What do people want to know to get the show started? So if I may, again, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm thankful to be your co-host, your guest co-host. And yeah, fire away. What do we got?
Okay, let's start with Ray as a way of getting to know him and what he thinks about. So, one of the questions that the viewers had was, I can feel the energy of my deceased loved one in the room. I feel like they need my help. They've always needed my help. What should I do?
Hmm. Those who don't know, I do have mediumship abilities. So I have the ability to sometimes see complete strangers, but anyone who has a bond with someone who passes on can connect with them in different ways. And a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, I feel my um, grandfather, or I feel my brother, or I feel this person or that person. And what I explained was, in death, when we pass on, we become all knowing. We get this look at the world in a different perspective. I mean, having crossed over and had an NDE and came back, I mean, it was very brief, and I certainly didn't get the whole experience. But one of the things that even my mentor explained to me is that we become like an all-knowing being, in the sense that we know what we did wrong, we know what we did right. We're part of the collective now, so we have access to information that we didn't have before. And it opens up these doors that just we didn't have when we were here. So if the deceased was being helped, now it may be time for the deceased to do the helping, because now he or she is in a place of a higher level of consciousness and has access to a lot more information. I would reevaluate the way the relationship used to be and put it in a different context, because they're coming now to help you, to give back and say, listen, I can see things, I can feel things, I know things, and let me try to get that information to you. And that's what I think was happening when I got that question.
I love that so much. I often hear people talking about unresolved feelings. People on this side, maybe there was some sort of tension or unresolved issue in a relationship, and then that person dies, maybe when it's like we never got to resolve it. And the
Yeah.
person we down here are thinking, this is still happening. I'm either in the role of caregiver, or I feel like I owe them an apology, or I'm still angry with them, or maybe they're still angry with me. And what I hear from people like yourself is, once you're passed over and you're all knowing, you're also in love consciousness.
Yeah.
There
That's
is
right.
no like I'm holding a grudge. And they have such greater capacity. And so those roles, it's almost like a clean slate, but so like bedrocked in love.
Yes. Well said. And a lot of times when they want to come back through, there's things that they want to say, like, I'm sorry about this, or I'm sorry about that. And there's these feelings of remorse and regret, like you mentioned. And it's almost like, hey, let me help you now. Let me guide you for a little while. Let me
Yeah.
take you to places where you want to go.
Yeah, I hope that is so reassuring and comforting to people because we can hold on to this stuff. I know I can. So, another person asked you, how do you differentiate between striving for and wanting an abundance of wealth and finding happiness and contentment in presence at the same time?
There's nothing wrong with having wealth, right? But if the Buddha said, there is no path to happiness, happiness is the path. So what we tend to do in our human selves is we fight for a goal. We make it to the goal. We achieve that goal. We immediately set another and we fight, and then we get to that goal. So what we're doing is we're having like a high, low life, right? Because we have very selected moments when we feel really good. That's when we accomplished our goal and we got to the next milestone of, in this case, wealth, right? So if you live your entire life like that, you've only got a few moments of sheer joy and happiness. Whereas what the Buddha is trying to say is happiness is the path. So if you love what you do, and if you don't love what you do, then change what you do to something that you love and allow that to generate your wealth, generate your goals, and achieve your goals doing something that you love. So that happiness is the path. Every day is just as important as the day you make it to the goal, and it's kind of a balance. Anybody who's had an addiction, they know you're always chasing that high, chasing that high. Well, this is a way to balance that and have every day be just as good as the day that you achieve your goal.
Well, to add on to that, and I know from conversations you and I have had, when we're thinking about manifesting, it's almost living as if. And so
Mm,
the advice that I've received from sagacious leaders and mentors in my life has also been, yes, you can strive with a vision in mind, but every day, like you said, believe it's already here. So much of spiritual teaching is around, particularly as of late, raise your vibration, be in love consciousness. There's an awakening happening. You want to be a part of it. You don't want to be part of the low density suffering folks who are, in third dimension living. And yet we're moving through so much of history has been this way, but I feel like we have so much more access with the speed of information technology,
mm.
social media. We're being bombarded with trauma, war, trauma, abuse, cruelty, greed, hatred. How do we keep our vibration high when we are also living these sentient lives as human beings and we feel emotion? I have not had an NDE. I am not a psychic medium. I think of myself as like many of the viewers, I'm in your seat. I am a seeker. Who I am, however, is someone who is an empath, highly sensitive. My training almost 30 years ago, I earned my master's degree in counseling psychology, and I went to a school, the California Institute of Integral Studies, and it's about transpersonal psychology. So from a very young age, even before, in my 20s when I earned my master's degree in psychology, I've always been drawn to why are we here? Knowing there is so much more. And being trained as a therapist and being a spiritual seeker and having, a handful of spiritually transformative experiences, it can feel like a real tension between wanting to be evolved. These emotions that we have, often difficult, they are data points, but the mistake so many of us make, myself included, is we over index on the emotion. They become self referential. The emotion is who we are, not just something that is feeding us information, and information that might actually be very connected to our life path, our mission, our blueprint, our contract. If we are to learn forgiveness, say, if we are to learn self advocacy, if we are to learn how to be a teacher of others, we need to learn empathy. So these emotions are so important. So I teach people how to actually experience emotion, metabolize emotion, move through emotion. So I know so many people, again, myself included, can feel like, what's wrong with me that I'm feeling sad, that I'm feeling despair, that I'm feeling anger, when in fact it's an opportunity to experience it, let it move through you, and that we shouldn't be spiritually bypassing to try to elevate a love consciousness because it will be a deterrent if we don't feel our feelings.
Mm,
So,
that's really important. One of the things that I like to say is try saying, "I am angry," and then say, "I'm experiencing anger." Big difference, right? Big difference in the emotion, and that the emotion, we know an experience will come to an end. It will dissipate. And it's not that we don't want to feel them, we don't want to have them. We're going to. But how fast can you let go of the negative ones, right?
mm-hmm. And think about the language. I am angry.
You just defined yourself.
That is who I am. I am anger. Right? I love that. I love
And
that.
that used to be me, like, I would be the guy that, "Arr, you cut me off," and I would be the first one to be like that, and 10, 20 years ago, and now I'm just so grateful that when those emotions arise, I'm able to just kinda let them flow through me, and it's just like there's a little bit of a peak, and then it just dissipates, but
Mhm.
it takes years of practice, as you know.
It does, and hopefully it takes less than years. I mean, it takes a little bit of time to gain the awareness and then a lifetime to continually practice because we are here to learn and experience and stay humble in the process, which is a really good segue to another question someone had for you, which is, why do many experts say one must get comfortable with being uncomfortable if one wants anything to improve or change?
Mm. So getting outside your comfort zone, this achieves several different things. And think of it from a perspective of the Buddha. Let's take the Buddha's story, for example. He was a prince. He could have anything brought to him that he wanted. And his father said that you can have anything you want, just don't go beyond the walls of the compound. And that's because there's sickness, there's illness, there's tragedies and traumas and things that he had never experienced. Now, the Buddha was very curious as a young man and he wanted to see beyond the walls. And he did a few times and he saw a lot of suffering. And as he grew older, even though he married and had a child, he knew he was drawn to that to experience what was on the other side of the walls, which was very uncomfortable. But he knew that he could not reach enlightenment by only living half a life. And that holds true for all of us. We have to experience all emotions. We have to experience good things and bad things in order to kind of level up, if you will. We may not reach enlightenment, maybe we will. But the thing about being uncomfortable, he put himself out there and lived as a homeless man for many, many, many years in order to truly understand suffering so that he could elevate himself from it and show others how to do the same. So, although you may not have to go to that extreme, the point of being uncomfortable is to allow yourself, push yourself through these hurdles or over these hurdles that are blocking you, that are holding you back. It's usually caused by fear, mostly, right? A lot of the fears that we have are not even our own, but getting past them is what makes us want to continue to do things that are uncomfortable, which continue our growth.
Yeah. God, that's fascinating. It makes me think of even like epigenetics. When,
Yes.
like unconsciously in this lifetime, people put upon us these identities that fit the narrative that is not our narrative, but we so easily adopt it. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the issues are in our tissues, like the body keeps the score. So, another question someone had for me was around, and I won't be able to say it as well as it was said, but around sensitivity. How is sensitivity a strength? And this is something that is very true to me since the moment I came into this planet. I've always been highly sensitive, which can feel like a curse, quite frankly, because I can look at the other people in my life. just, they're like lumberjacks and I'm feeling like a little daisy and being like, how on earth can this be seen as a strength? And again, it goes to this idea around identity that if we're comparing ourselves against other people and everyone seems to just be functioning, and as a sensitive person, there are just so many, feels like more data points coming in and everything. It's like the volume is ratcheted up. And so I've worked a long time to understand my sensitivity and understand that it is a strength. I could talk about this for a very long time because there's been so much inquiry and so much healing around this. But I hope this speaks to people. And I imagine many people who are tuning into this as a seeker, they're drawn to learning lessons around empathy, around growth, around healing. I went for years and I have a traumatic childhood background, but I went for years judging myself. I went for years getting sick, whether it was a migraine, then it developed into autoimmune diseases because I wasn't practicing self compassion. But what I hope to impart around other sensitive people is that it feels like so much of current society, politically, socially, environmentally, it's like a pounding drum that is getting louder and louder and louder. And if we are thinking of ourselves as an orchestra, collectively, humanity, we need to find a way to harmonize.
Mm,
Drumbeat is super loud, and that's what we pay attention to. The people who are speaking the loudest, the people who have the most, the people who have the most power. And yet those of us who are sensitive, maybe we're playing the violin, and that is something when the violin is being played, you have to slow down. You have to lean into. It's a different tune, it's a different instrument, but it's providing information to say what we are doing can't do using only one instrument. And I love drums, but it's just one instrument and it tends to be loud. And so my hope is in my sharing my journey of recognizing that it is a gift, is that once we tune into our own instruments, once we learn to care for ourselves, the gift that we provide is that we do pay attention differently. We can provide sacred space, and that's what I do as a coach, is really with unconditional love, holding presence for people who are
mhm.
through difficulty. So therein, I could talk again for a long time. Therein lies your strength, but it requires the black belt of mindfulness and the black belt of spirituality, self-compassion, so that we can, back to vibration, contribute to elevating love consciousness more.
Wow, that was amazing. Can I ask you a question though? How do you protect yourself? I can feel the energy of others. I can pick up on what they're feeling, but I'm not affected by it like an empath is.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the techniques that you tell people? What can you do to self guard yourself if you are an empath?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really important question. So there are a number of things. It's about intention and it is about energy. So especially the work I do, I will have client after client. And even if they're not, showing up because they want to talk about healing work, they talk about something difficult that happened at work, or they're angry, or they're having any number of emotions. I imagine like an energetic field. I imagine like a bubble around me where I can be seen, they could be seen, but it just doesn't touch. Doesn't always work because sometimes I feel it so much. Or if I hear what's going on in Gaza or Ukraine or any number of things, especially if it's with children, I know, back to what I was saying before, I need to feel it. I just need to cry if I need to cry. I need to send golden light, send love, feel like there's something that I can do to share my love so that I don't just feel like I'm bearing witness to incredible suffering without any sort of propensity to help. And then it is clearing emotion.
Mhm.
And that is another conversation. But learning emotional regulation is one, and then clearing it is another, and then protecting is the last. Being in nature is also really important.
Yeah.
Alone time is really important. Recognizing my own cues when my body starts to feel dysregulated because our nervous systems are operating systems. And so, in as much as we want to be spiritually elevated, if we are dysregulated and we are in fight or flight or fawn or whatever it is, freeze, that we need to understand this vessel that we are in and tend to it. So it takes a lot of work, and there's a reason why we can get really tired. And then
Mm.
it's the practice, the emotional regulation, the clearing, the boundary, doing things that are kind, and also sending love, sending love.
Yeah, I only I mean, I experienced that, not to say I don't have the feelings. I have feelings, and of course, it breaks my heart when I see certain things that are on the news, but the where I got the most of that is when I was practicing mediumship and people were coming through to me from the other side with these emotions of regret, remorse, shame, and guilt. And I think that's similar to the way an empath
Mhm.
feels almost every day. And I don't practice mediumship for that reason because it is taxing on
Yes.
on my soul. So
Yeah.
I can't practice it every day. I can't do it. And that's why I've chose a different path of coaching, going in a different direction and helping people become closer to enlightenment. But I know what you feel, and if you feel that a lot, you've got to protect yourself, but I can only imagine how difficult that must be overall.
Yeah, I mean, from a little kid, like, I hated to go to school. I even hated nursery school. I would say my tummy is nervous. When I would get around people, I would just feel so much energy coming at me, and I just wanted to be with one friend, two friend, alone outside, and being thrust into the world was really hard, but you have no words, you have no conception, you are an outsider, and people are looking at you. In fact, my first grade teacher thought I was developmentally delayed.
Mm.
1, because I was so shy and highly sensitive. 2, I was coming from pretty bad violence at home. And so the combination, now I'm in this setting where I just want to be safe. Hey, misunderstood a lot. I honestly feel like between people like you who are showing people the path, people like me, and many other people, again, it's the tapestry, it's the orchestra to say, what is my life path? For people who are sensitive, I think of them as healers and teachers. If we can really say, okay, if I am saying yes to being a healer and a seeker, I'm also saying yes to the work of personal awareness and tremendous self care because we will burn out. It's too
Oh, yeah.
much. It's too much.
Self-care, is something that I really go deep into with my clients because everybody always thinks that in order to better themselves, they must do something for others. And that part is true, but you also can't forget yourself, right? It's like the pilot says, when the mask falls, you have to put the mask on yourself, then help the child.
Yeah.
So we have to remember to care for ourselves as well as everyone else. And whenever I'm working with moms, they are always, the kids, the kids, the kids,
Mhm.
and themselves last. And I get that because I raised my own 2 sons, and I did it in the same manner because I didn't know how to regulate that. I had to find my way to learning that if I don't take care of me, I can't take care of them.
Yeah.
So, it has to be that balance, just as important as they are, otherwise they're not gonna get what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot.
Yeah,
I think of it as like a gauge in a car that is broken. The guilt thing's always going to say, like, you know, there's a problem here. There's a problem here. You don't
yeah.
just this. Anyway, so time is going by really quickly, but this was fun. And to let everyone know, yes, we're going to be having conversations again. This was the inaugural, kind of getting to know us. We invite your questions. We will also be having guests, so you can think of it as kind of like the view, like it's a panel where we get to discuss different topics. Again, always around metaphysics, enlightenment, being an empath, being a human being, and a spiritual path towards love. But I really enjoyed the conversation with you today, Ray.
Me too, Kristen. I think this was awesome. I can't wait to do it with you again.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And like, subscribe, share. And if you have a comment, we are only accepting ones that are constructive feedback, that are respectful, And malicious comments will be deleted just so that you're aware. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.